Welcome back, students, to TESL Methods 1. I'm Dr. Carolyn Aufderhaar. In this module, we're going to talk about instructional approaches to ESL teaching, an overview of historical and contemporary methods. Previously, we discussed the demographics of English language learners. We learned that over 9% of public school students in the United States are English language learners. How can we best help these students reach their grade level and beyond, not just socially, but also academically? The three common groupings of language teaching set forth by International TESL are grammar-based approaches that focus on structure and function, communication approaches that emphasize using language in meaningful context, and content-based approaches that help ELL students with content material, such as language arts, social studies, science, and math. Our goal is to gain a basic understanding of these approaches and their associated methods. Grammar-based approaches teach about structure and function of language. They tend to be teacher-centered without a lot of meaningful novel utterances created by students. These methods include the grammar translation method, the audiolingual method, and the direct method. The grammar translation method focuses on teaching reading and writing for translation purposes. Grammar rules of the target language are explained in the student's native language, and the emphasis is on accuracy rather than fluency. You can learn more about this method by visiting the link below. The audiolingual method focuses on listening and speaking and pronunciation accuracy. It was used in World War II to train foreign service specialists to go overseas, and it was highly successful because of how motivated they were to succeed in those settings. When I think of the audiolingual method, I sometimes think of Carolyn Graham's jazz chants and grammar chants. I've used these in the Ukraine, I use them in Korea, I use them in the United States with children, but also adults. It can really help tap into the musical side of the brain to learn grammar structure of English. The direct method is also known as the natural method, and this includes the Berlitz approach. Students are totally immersed in the target language. No use of the native language is allowed. Students listen to a teacher monologues, followed by participating in question and answer exercises and repetition. A grammar point is the topic of the lesson. Conscious awareness of grammatical rules is emphasized. Indeed, grammar is the foundation in which language should be taught, according to the direct method. And sentences tend to be taught in isolation. I encourage you to visit the link to see examples of the direct method. The background of the communication content-based approaches are founded in Vygotsky and Kreishin. In socioconstructivism, Vygotsky coined his zone of proximal development theory, and that is that the distance between what a child can do and without assistance and what he can do with assistance can be bridged through social ties between novice and expert. Also, Kreishin modeled his theory of the comprehensible input hypothesis. And that was basically the I+1 theory, where the I stood for the input and the +1 was one step beyond what the learner knows. His monitor hypothesis distinguished between acquisition and learning. So conscious language knowledge acts as the monitor, but actual utterances are produced through language that is acquired or subconscious. Also, his natural order hypothesis stated that there is a natural order to the acquisition of grammatical rules, and very famously, his affective filter emphasized the importance of self-confidence and motivation and how anxiety can interfere with language learning. So based on this theory, teachers should do all that they can to lower the affective filter or the anxiety level of language learning. The first communication-based approach is total physical response. This is based on bodily movement and commands. It's quite kinesthetic in nature with the bodily awareness paired with language learning. I use this quite a bit in my teaching with children in Korea. And I often wish that I could use this in my own language learning. I know that the only Korean I remember from my formal tutoring session was Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes song that I learned with movement. This is the only thing I remember from 15 years ago. So I think it's very powerful, and I would like to do more of it in my own learning. Students are totally immersed in the target language, and they build their receptive vocabulary by listening and acting. And you can visit the YouTube link to see an example of that. Another communication-based approach is the natural method. The goal of this is to develop skills for everyday social situations. Students are totally immersed in the target language, and the teacher strives to create their first language environment of infancy and young childhood through interesting topics supported by games, music, total physical response, and other activities. And the student is allowed to have a silent period. That's very important, the silent period in language learning, that we respect it. And this goes on the principle that comprehension precedes production. And the teacher strives to lower the student's affective filter, as in Kreisch's theory, to lessen anxiety and focus on the classroom organization by topic, not grammatical structure. You can learn more about this by visiting the link below and see some examples. Content-based approaches attempt to develop a student's ability to function at grade level within language arts, math, social studies, and science, and other subjects. In the content-based approach, the goal is not to learn English. The goal is that English is simply a vehicle to learn the content area. It's a central learning tool. In the content-based approach, L2 is acquired in meaningful contexts, and any new information you give a student must be linked to their existing knowledge base, or schema, we sometimes call it. Also, the terms BICS and CALPS apply here. BICS are basic interpersonal communication skills, or the social language, and CALPS are the cognitive academic language proficiency skills. So CALPS can take years and years longer than BICS. And it's important as teachers and administrators and parents that we know that our child may be socially proficient in language, but they still may have difficulty, underlying language difficulties when it comes to academic content, especially at the higher grade levels. Sheltered English Instruction, or SEI, is designed for ELLs who have reached at least an intermediate level of proficiency and who possess a basic literacy skills, although I've seen it used with newcomers who are also learning basic English. Grade level content is taught through the vehicle of comprehensible input. Here, input refers to speech or printed text. Content and language objectives are stated for each lesson, including vocabulary. Input is made comprehensible through clearer, slightly slower speech, repetition and phrasing, adequate wait time of 10 or 15 seconds. This is very important and often we forget it. Avoidance of idiomatic expressions and awareness of vocabulary, as well as scaffolding complex tasks into simpler steps. Visual supports can be very important here. SEI should be used as a bridge between newcomer language instruction and mainstream language content. In our next module, we will look at key components to consider when planning a unit of study and classroom activities for English language learners. We will look at differentiated instruction based on the child's language level. We will also look at instructional accommodations that help support students in accessing content-based knowledge. These can include sensory supports, anything visual, such as realia, manipulatives, pictures or diagrams, – media such as videos, movement. Accommodations also include graphic support, such as graphic organizers, timelines, KWL charts, and interactive support, such as assigning a buddy to the student or having them in a small group. There's also plenty of software that is helpful for English language learners and websites. We will also look at the lesson plan checklist for sheltered English instruction. And I encourage you to check out the mini SIOP books, that's SIOP, Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol by Echeverria, Vogt, and Short. They put out many books for SIOP for math, social studies, language arts, science, also for the different grade levels. And there are many other books as well for SEI and content-based learning. We will look at a bibliography during our next module. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.